You know, sometimes in sports, an entire championship, an entire legacy, can hinge on just a few seconds. Well, back in 1927, a heavyweight title fight came down to one frantic moment. A moment so wild, so controversial, that almost 100 years later, people are still arguing about what really happened. And that's really the heart of the mystery, isn't it? A 10 count in boxing is supposed to be the law. 10 seconds, you're on the mat, you're out. Simple. But in this fight, the champion was down for at least 13 seconds, and he still got up to win. So how in the world did that happen? Let's unpack this thing. To really get the controversy, you have to feel the absolute massive hype around this thing. This wasn't just another fight. This was the Roaring '20s, and this was a rematch between two of the biggest sports icons on the entire planet, Gene Tunney and Jack Dempsey. And boy, were these guys different. It was a total clash of styles. You had the champion, Gene Tunney, the fighting Marine. He was a thinker, a technician, a guy who would outbox you with his brilliant footwork. And then you had the challenger, the ferocious former champ, Jack Dempsey, the Manasseh Mauler. This guy was a wrecking ball, pure aggression, pure power. This was the rematch everybody was dying to see. Because just a year earlier, Tunney did the unthinkable. He beat the seemingly invincible Jack Dempsey for the title. See, Dempsey wasn't just a boxer, he was this folk hero, this brawling, working-class icon. So now he was coming back for revenge, and the entire country was hooked. And when I say hooked, I mean it translated into some serious cash. This fight had the first ever $2 million gate in entertainment history. To put that in perspective, that's like almost $50 million today. It was just an absolutely massive spectacle. But it wasn't just about the money. Look at this number. Over 100,000 people crammed into Chicago's Soldier Field to watch it live. You gotta remember, this was the peak of the Roaring '20s, before the Super Bowl, before the World Cup. An event like this was the biggest show on Earth. And the drama wasn't just inside the ropes. The fight actually had to be moved because Dempsey's camp was worried about Al Capone getting involved. Word on the street was that Capone himself had bet 50 grand on Dempsey, which you can imagine just fueled all kinds of wild rumors. But believe it or not, all of this hype, all this money, all this drama, it would all come down to one single brand new rule that was put in place for this fight. Okay, so here's the crucial detail. For this fight, they were using a new rule that wasn't standard yet. It said that after a knockdown, the fighter still standing had to go to a neutral corner before the referee would even start the 10 count. Now remember that little detail is everything. And this is where it all starts to go wrong. Dempsey, he was old school. His entire career, his instinct was to stand right over a guy he just knocked down, ready to attack again. And apparently his camp just kind of blew off this new rule during training, a decision that would end up being, well, incredibly costly. And that brings us to the 7th round. For the first 6 rounds, Tunney was doing his thing, outboxing Dempsey pretty handily. But then, in the blink of an eye, everything changed, and we got the single most debated moment in the history of the sport. Boom! Dempsey, the Manasseh Mauler, finally got Tunney trapped against the ropes. He unleashes this flurry of punches, and for the very first time in his professional career, Gene Tunney is knocked flat on his back. The stadium just exploded. So here's exactly how it went down. Dempsey, just running on pure instinct, stands over Tunney, breaking that new rule. The referee, he refuses to start the count. He's yelling at Dempsey, physically pushing him to a neutral corner, and all this time, precious seconds are just ticking away. Only then does he turn back to Tunney and start the official count. And Tunney, looking pretty dazed, manages to get up at the referee's count of 9. But here's the kicker. When they went back and looked at the films of the fight, they timed it. From the moment Tunney hit the canvas to the moment he was back on his feet, at least 13 seconds had passed. 13! In any normal fight, that's a knockout. Game over. But because of Dempsey's mistake, the fight went on. So Tunney survives a knockdown that should have been a knockout. What happened next is what cemented the long count fight forever in sports history. It turns out those few extra seconds were all Tunney needed to clear the cobwebs. He got back up, he survived the round, and then he went right back to his game plan. He used his superior boxing skills, stayed on the outside, and just outpointed Dempsey for the rest of the fight. In the end, he won by a clear, unanimous decision. He kept his title,
Amid all that chaos and controversy, what Dempsey did next was just pure class. The second the final bell rang, he walked over to Tunney's corner, raised his arm, and told him he was the better man. Just an incredible moment of sportsmanship.
But the debate, oh, the debate, raged on for decades. Was Dempsey robbed by a technicality, or did he only have himself to blame? And while fans argued, the two fighters actually became really good friends later in life. And of course, today, both are legends enshrined in the Hall of Fame.
And if you need any more proof of how significant this moment was, get this. The actual gloves Tunney wore that night are now sitting in the Smithsonian. That's a piece of a national museum, a permanent reminder of one of the wildest moments in sports.
So, what do you think? Was it just a costly mistake by a fighter who forgot a new rule? Or was it basically a stolen championship, won because of a few extra seconds on the clock? Nearly 100 years later, we still don't have an answer. And honestly, that's probably why the long count fight is a story we'll never forget.